Welcome to The Fly-In, a podcast brought to you by the New Dems Coalition. Today is Monday, April 7th, and we record this as lawmakers from across the country fly into D.C. I'm Greg Landsman.
And I'm Mark Veasey from the Lone Star State.
We are here to run through some of the most important things that will happen this week in the United States Congress, things that are happening across the country. Today, we're going to talk about Trump's trade war, Congressional Republicans' disastrous budget, the national protest that we saw over the weekend, Signalgate, and much more. And we're excited to be joined by Congressman Adam Smith, one of the original members of New Dems when it was founded in 1997, and the current ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Adam, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Let's get into it. Signalgate, as the ranking member of Armed Services and somebody with more credibility on national security issues than just about anyone I know. What was the latest? I mean, you know, the news was from this week that this was not the first time.
Right. No, I mean, Mike Waltz apparently has multiple different Signal chat groups set up in which he is discussing very sensitive and in some cases classified information. Look, this is an unqualified group of people in the national security team. And whatever you may think of Pete Hegseth, you cannot argue with the fact that he was the least qualified person to take the job. You want to argue, well, we needed an outsider, we needed a new voice, fine. But nobody with his lack of experience has ever had that job. And it's showing. Same Tulsi Gabbard, heading. I mean, the people who are supposed to know what it means to protect sensitive information, they're not in the loop. And also, because he's fired so many people at the Pentagon, we don't have a chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He fired C.Q. Brown for no good reason. So the people who know how to run these operations are not in the room. We have an inexperienced team that is damaging in a whole lot of different ways, not just because they don't know how to protect information.
Before we leave this topic, how important do you think this is for the American people, and what part should matter most to them?
Well, it makes us weaker and it makes us less safe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. We're supposed to be protecting our national security. If we're not making the right decisions. Look, there's a 3-week bombing campaign in Yemen right now that most people are unaware of. It wasn't just a one-day thing on the Signalgate. It is ongoing. Thus far, it has not succeeded. Where is it going? What's happening to it? The war in Gaza has started back up. The president's team doesn't seem to be able to do anything about that. Meanwhile, he's appeasing Vladimir Putin, so Russia is continuing to push forward with the war in Ukraine, while Ukraine is questioning whether or not we're going to be there. That level of inexperience places us in jeopardy all around the world and ultimately back home if we don't have an intelligent and well-informed national security team.
Speaking of back home, jobs report came out. The layoff announcements rose to their third highest ever month total in March, driven almost entirely by Trump and Musk and these indiscriminate firings of now hundreds of thousands of federal employees, almost 300,000 layoffs in March, again, third largest monthly total of all time, 60% jump from February. Up 205% from March of 2024, so against last year. How significant is this in terms of, A, people's lives, but B, the politics of this place?
Well, Trump is wrecking our economy and making us weaker across the board. Our federal government is important. I mean, people want to get their checks from the Social Security Administration. If that agency doesn't run well, that impacts people. Veterans want to get their health care from the VA. A whole bunch of people are fired. They can't get access to care. So he's weakening the federal institution. He's weakening our economy. Witness all of the layoffs. And then internationally, he's weakening. And an example occurred to me while you were asking that question on your previous question about what does this mean internationally. When we were attacked on 9/11, the whole rest of the world came together and helped us. They helped us find Al-Qaeda. They helped us find the offshoots of that. Where's that help going to be now? It's not good. So across the board, he's making us weaker. He's weakening the government. He's weakening the economy. He's weakening our international partnerships. And that makes us more vulnerable. And there's no end in sight. He doubles and triples down. So I think that's the main theme we have to hit on. He's weakening the country across the board.
I have hundreds of people who are losing their jobs. Now, we're fighting that. And my goal is to ensure that I get every one of the folks in Southwest Ohio reinstated. I mean, that's our goal. I'm assuming you're having the same experiences, where you know people who are losing their jobs. I mean, what are you hearing when you get back, to the district?
Yeah, no, when I'm back in Texas, people are absolutely fearful of losing their jobs. There have been people that have federal jobs in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that have already been laid off, that I've been alerted to. And I'm letting them know that we are pushing back, that there are court cases. But for people that have to pay their bills, man, it brings a lot of anxiety into their homes, into their jobs, and it just creates a lot of uncertainty. So it's a real problem, and I think that people need to understand that Trump thinks that he can remake the American economy into whatever it is that he thinks. Maybe he wants to take us back to the 1900s, but it's not going to be that easy. We're going to pay for this. Everyone is, regardless of where they may happen to live or who they voted for. And it's going to be disastrous for American families. It's going to be beyond what people's 401ks might be. Everyone is going to pay higher costs because of the crazy inactions that Trump has taken on the economy.
So let's get into the three big things for the week. On the tariffs, the market obviously tanked and continues to tank.
It is tanking.
Yes, it is tanking. So let's look. The Dow over the course of, look at this. I mean, it is one of the things, as President of the United States, you don't want to see. But imagine if you did this. I mean, a global pandemic had a similar impact. A run on the banks during the Great Depression. He did this. I mean, he
Right.
single-handedly did this, although I would say enabled by a Republican-controlled Congress that refuses to stand in the way, that refuses to put any guardrails on this president as it relates to anything, including the tariffs.
We in Congress can stop this. We can stop this reckless, incredibly expanded trade war, because we can take away the president's emergency power that he is using to implement these tariffs. The Senate already passed something to restrict the tariffs that were going into effect on Canada and Mexico. We can put pressure on the House Republicans to stand up and stop this carnage, if you will, where we've heard that before, that President Trump, like you said, the pandemic happened, no one could control it. The Great Depression had multiple factors. Donald Trump chose to crash our economy. He chose to take these steps and these actions. Congress can turn it around. We need to put pressure on the Republicans in the House and the Senate to do their jobs.
We need 218 votes. We've got 215. We only need a half a dozen members of the Republican conference to say we are going to stop this nonsense and join us. What was Trump doing this weekend, Mark?
Yeah, Trump was golfing this weekend while people were losing their jobs. And some of the very jobs that he said his tariffs are going to help, like auto jobs, you saw that there were large layoffs in Michigan. So it's obviously not helping. And people need to realize that, and I'm just going to be 100% frank and blurt this out there. We're not going to make socks in America again. You're either going to pay $4 for a pair of socks or you're going to pay $8 for a pair of socks. We're not going to make socks here again. And the reason why we have this system of trade and free trade with other allies, including places like Canada and Mexico, is so we can pass down savings and costs to the American public. And once you start tinkering with that, and once you have someone that starts tinkering with that doesn't have the capacity and doesn't know what they're doing, then that's when you start to see these numbers happen, and that's when people start to lose their savings. That's when people start to lose their small businesses. That's when people start to lose their jobs on the auto assembly lines, and that's exactly what's happening right now.
And that's a key point, because if the notion is we want to start making things in America again, there's no consistency to this. You mentioned that example, but we passed the CHIPS Act, something that we could make in America. We could build the plants. We're making the investment. Trump is blocking us spending the money to enact the CHIPS Act and start making chips here. So Trump doesn't seem to have an economic plan. To me, this is all about power. Trump levied tariffs on well over 100 countries. Thousands of businesses, all kinds of people are now dependent on what happens with these tariffs. And if you want relief from them, you got to go to Trump. Whether you're a country, a business, someone trying to hold on to a job, he is once again consolidating power. We have to hold the Republicans in Congress accountable for letting him do that to the extreme detriment of the American people.
The amount of corruption associated with these carve-outs will be unprecedented. I mean, it's just, and if the market and people losing their wealth and their jobs, and the fact that costs are going to skyrocket, if that's not enough for congressional Republicans, hopefully the corruption that is about to follow will be enough. And as New Dems, we, some of our members have introduced the Prevent Tariff Abuse Act, which would restrict powers that Trump is now using and require congressional consultation, which would have slowed all of this down and most likely would have prevented all of it. That is a bill, but if the Republicans came to us with their own bill, we would jump on.
And Greg, let me say this. I talked earlier about Laura Loomer and the fact that that sort of nutcase being allowed in the White House, like we can't allow that to become normal. Why is it that for a while now, we've had Wall Street traders, hedge fund managers, top dogs on Wall Street continue to give Trump the benefit of the doubt? Oh, no, he's not really going to do that. Oh, he's just trying to use this as leverage. If any other president were to have said foolish and outlandish things like Trump said, people would have been in an uproar. But Wall Street kept giving this guy the benefit of the doubt, and look what he's done now. Now we see that it wasn't just a negotiating tool and that he wasn't just being crazy to try to get something, that he's actually doing this shit, right? So, like, at some point, we need to ask, and these business leaders, why are you giving this man the benefit of the doubt? You need to call him out right now and say that this is crazy and say that he is going to wreck this country.
And it circles back to the central problem with Trump. Trump is trying to do an autocratic takeover of our country. He wants the power. He smashes everything, and then everyone's got to come to him. It is absolutely corrupt. It's the Eric Adams deal. You do my policy, I'll give you a pardon. He's been passing out pardons to all manner of different people. He's now passing out contracts to Elon Musk in a variety of different places throughout the federal government. Everybody comes to him. Our representative government dies, and also the people suffer. I did a video last week where it's like, it's bad enough that Trump's a dictator, but he's the Bozo the Clown of dictators, all right? He's not even doing it in any sort of efficient and effective way that's actually helping anything. He's weakening the economy, he's weakening our government, he's weakening our standing in the world, and all just to consolidate power that he very clearly doesn't even know how to use.
He's going to get wealthier.
Yes.
He and his friends are going to get wealthier, and I think that is the point. They promise to fix the economy. They have wrecked it. They promise to drain the swamp. This is the worst corruption I've ever seen in my entire life, and that's not hyperbolic. I mean, this is unprecedented corruption, and now they are going after Social Security and people's health care. The budget resolution is coming back to the House. The Senate passed it. Mark, what to expect? I mean, what should folks be looking for as they move forward with this disastrous budget?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you hit it right when you said that they're going to get rich. These people are going to get filthy rich off of everyone else's misery. And that is a point that we need to continue to drive home, and we need to get people to pay attention to. This is not going to be something that just goes away if we all sit back. We need for everyone to let the Trump administration know that what they're doing is wrong, and it's a disaster, and they're ruining America.
They won't get a single vote from us.
No.
And let's do the math, and then because it's around $4.5 trillion. Most of that is going to the wealthiest people in the United States.
The tax cut portion
in tax cuts. And so they're going to spend trillions on the wealthiest people, the Elon Musks of the world. And they're going to pay for it by deficit spending to the tune of several $1 trillion, which will further exacerbate our deficit and debt issues. And they are going to go after people's health care and Social Security. I mean, you're talking about $1 trillion, nearly $1 trillion yanked away in terms of people's health care.
Yeah, well, the big point, the one point, they claim that all these firings, all these programs that are being shut down, all of the actions that they're taking are in part driven by a concern about the debt. Their budget increases the debt. If they do nothing, if they don't pass a budget, the debt will be lower than if they act. So it clearly is not about the debt. But the other thing I did want to get into that, being one of the founding members of the New Democrats and what the New Democrats were about when we wanted to come up with ideas to help solve problems. And what Trump is doing is disastrous, but I think we as Democrats, and particularly as New Democrats, have to understand we got here in part because of the wealth gap in this country. And the economic policies that we put in place in the 90s and the early 2000s left far too many people behind. And I think one of the big burdens on the Democratic Party that we haven't taken up yet is what are we going to do about it? How are we going to address the wealth gap? How are we going to deal with the debt? And I think there's a lot of better ideas, but one of my concerns, and I saw all the protests, and that's great. It's good that people are rising up. We have to offer the American people a reasonable alternative to address the shortcomings of our economy. I don't think we're there yet. I think we need to talk about that. What are we going to do? And I know you, Greg, actually, if I may prompt you, you're working on this. Yeah. I think this is a crucial part of what we need to do. It's great to get out and yell about how terrible Trump is. That has to be done. But you got to give the American people something that shows here's what we're going to do that's better. So
yeah, I've been working on, and it's very much in part of the work I do with New Dems, an agenda that takes us in an entirely different direction. That says these fights that we're having right now to protect our economy and to stop the chaos and the corruption and the cruelty of Trump. All of that needs to happen alongside of us laying out an alternative, which we should have very soon, and hopefully that will begin a conversation about all of the things that really do have to take place for us to fix what they're breaking.
And the issues matter. When we first formed the New Democrats, it was coming after Reagan won 2 terms, Bush won, then we got wiped out in '94. There was a general feeling amongst a lot of Democrats that the New Deal wasn't enough anymore. We needed to come up with some new ideas. We organized ourselves around 4 issues: fiscal responsibility, education, trade, and technology. And it really kind of worked. We balanced the budget. We got a surplus. At the end of the Clinton presidency, you saw people in the lower ends of the economic ladder actually beginning to benefit. But where the New Democrats need to go now, that proved insufficient. Opening up markets was great. Adopting better tech policy was great. But the benefits of that were not shared as evenly as they should have been. We over-relied on education, on the idea that everyone could go off and get a 4-year degree and become an engineer and that was going to be fine. We didn't support unions strongly enough. We didn't support the minimum wage strongly enough. We didn't create economic opportunity across the board, which is the role I think New Dems can play now, not to be what we were back then. This is 25, 28 years later. Times have changed. The thing that I loved about the New Dems and the reason I stuck with them, I came into so many meetings when I first got to Congress and everyone was talking about how we could get a partisan advantage. We're going to win this. The New Dems were the one group that I went to where we talked about ideas. We talked about, okay, our education system isn't where it needs to be, and it's not now either, by the way. What are we going to do to fix it? Technology was exploding. How can we use technology, to actually help meet the economic needs of the country? So it is the ideas group, and I think we got to sort of fire that back up again and not just be part of the choir that's out there yelling about how awful Trump is. Needs to be done. What are we going to do to offer the American people a reasonable alternative?
Couldn't agree more, and incredibly well said.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a very similar experience, which was when I was deciding whether or not to run for Congress. I was having all kinds of meetings that were about politics and stuff that just didn't interest me that much. And then I sat down with New Dems, and it was all about ideas. And I thought, you know what? I'm in. You mentioned the protests. Let's talk a little bit about what you saw. What your thoughts on the weekend's protests?
Yeah, no, I'm glad that people are out there expressing their discontent and their angst with everything that Trump is doing. People should be doing that. That is part of our First Amendment rights that are guaranteed to each and every one of us as Americans. And it's important too to keep this like in the spotlight, to keep this in front of the American people, that what's happening right now is just completely wrong and corrupt and full of cronyism, and that it needs to stop.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to continue to demonstrate and to protest and to organize. I'd like to see a national voter registration effort, sort of Freedom Summer, but on, across the whole country. I just, reinvigorating our democracy from the ground up, to me, is going to be part of what gets us out of this mess. But it was great to see. We do have to balance that with a forward-looking vision for how we are going to fix the things that are broken, how we're going to fix the economy, how we're going to fix government, how we're going to fix politics. And but that's on us, and I think we're heading in a much better direction. But this is going to be one of the most significant moments of our lives, and I thought Cory Booker, did a good job in sort of summarizing this moment, that it's a moral moment, and that it's not about right or left, but about right and wrong.
Yeah.
All right, before we get out of here, any final thoughts, things you're looking forward to this week?
I'm going to the Middle East at the end of this week, to Iraq, a few other countries, to sort of see what's going on over there. Obviously, huge challenges involved, so I'm looking forward to getting over there and learning more. And oddly, call me weird, I'm looking forward to the budget fight. Let's have this conversation. Let's stop with all this Republican nonsense about how much they care about the deficit while they run out onto the floor and vote to increase it by several $1 trillion.
Yep.
That's a fight I think we should have and we should win.
All right, that's it for this week. Thank you all for joining. Follow us on the social media platforms, the various ones, and we will be back in a couple weeks.
That's right. Y'all screenshot that. Follow us.